Welcome to Let's Talk Learning Disabilities with Laurie Peterson and Abby Weinstein. Laurie and Abby spend their days talking about dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, and ADHD. They talk to parents of struggling students and adults who have had a lifetime of academic challenges. They want to share those stories along with their own insights with you. So, let's talk learning disabilities.
Hey everybody, this is Laurie.
And this is Abby.
Welcome to episode number 98 of Let's Talk Learning Disabilities.
Today we have another special guest that we've brought to you that we think you guys will really enjoy and benefit from learning about this company and hearing what all they can do to help your students or yourself. Today we are with Candace from Lively Minds Institute. Thank you for being with us, Candace.
Thank you for having me. I love being here.
You're welcome. So let's, for our listeners, start out and just tell us a little bit about you and how you came to be involved with Lively Minds.
Well, I've been in education for about 25 years now, and I've always just had a soft spot for those students who are struggling and aren't quite able to reach their potential that we all know they have. And so about 12 years ago, I started an education company, and we really started working with students on academic content, math and reading and that. But what we realized pretty quickly was there was a large group of students who it wasn't really the academic content, it was more the skills. So they weren't struggling to do their math homework, they just couldn't find it in their backpack to turn it in. And so we knew that, there was this group of students who, if we could start to teach them some strategies and some skills, what more could they accomplish in the classroom? And so that was when Lively Minds Institute was born, essentially, as we started to put together a program to really identify the needs and figure out what the students, where their skill deficiencies were, and then really target that instruction so that we could teach specific strategies that they needed to meet expectations.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So Lively Minds teaches students skills that they don't necessarily learn in school.
Right. It's those executive function skills. So, and when we look at it, we categorize those skills as the behavioral skills like self-control and self-regulation, self-monitor, then the emotional skills like emotional control and flexibility, and then those cognitive ones that we all see so often with our kids, the task initiation, the planning, the organization, and then that focus and attention. Mm-hmm. And so those are the areas where we're really looking at with students to make sure that they have those skills. And when we see the deficits, that's when we look to see what tools can we give them.
How do you incorporate the parents into this process? Because I do feel like a lot of parents, especially that we see because they're so exhausted, they just think their child is lazy, which we try to nip that really quick and say it's not lazy, but that's how they feel. And I get that's how it looks, but they don't know, they just feel like the kid's doing it on purpose or they just don't care. How do you pull the parent in to help them understand what the deficit is and help them be part of the solution?
That is honestly one of my favorite parts, whether we're working with parents or we're working with educators, helping our adults understand that so often it's not defiance, it's not laziness, it's not unmotivation. It's really just they simply don't have the skills they need to meet those expectations. And especially as we see kids start to get older, we start to see them kind of slip a little bit more because they've tried hard and they haven't really been able to overcome that. And so it's frustrating for us as parents for sure. But when we're able to kind of shift that mindset and show that, okay, let's see what your student can do if they just have these few skills. And so part of it is just that education piece of let's look at this a different way. And so we really try to help frame that and show what does it take to learn these skills? Because when you don't have them, it's going to take a little bit of time to develop, take that strategy, practice the strategy, figure out what works well, tweak it, and then actually develop a habit or a skill. So really helping parents understand how that change happens is huge. And then I think just the communication piece of here's the strategy that we're teaching and let's here's the action plan that we've put in place so that the student can practice it. And I think that's one of the biggest pieces, is really communicating, here's how we're giving your student an opportunity to practice, so that then the parents can also be supportive. And so it doesn't require I think we all kind of feel like we fall into that nagging category. We're constantly nagging them. Did you finish your homework? Did you study for the test? But if we're able to kind of switch that a bit, where we've given the student a strategy and now we've given the parent a way to support and encourage their students rather than constantly nagging, I think that helps a lot. It just changes the mindset and the feeling for everybody.
Yeah, I think it also makes them just more empathetic of their child and what their child is going through, and helps them realize they're not intentionally taking an hour and a half to get ready for school in the morning, or they're not intentionally leaving all of their work in their backpack and not turning it in, or not following your multi-step directions.
Right,
so
exactly. Well, and I think too, I think one of the other really important pieces is it helps them see successes that they can celebrate that wouldn't normally be seen as successes. Something small that to us, especially if some of those executive functions come easily to us and we think, why do you not know how to find what you're looking for in your backpack? This is not hard, right? But if we're able to put a folder system in place, and now they can find what they need in their backpack, it's so important to those kids who've struggled for their parents to say, hey, I see that. Nice job, right? So being able to shift that mindset a bit so that parents recognize that actually is a big accomplishment, and all you have to do is just recognize it and give a bit of encouragement. And I think that makes a huge difference too.
I think helping them understand how powerful positive reinforcement is for these kids. I think that's, they've been doing so much nagging and so much kind of beating down, not because they're bad parents, because that's just what we do. Right. That sometimes you forget to celebrate those little wins. So I love that you're helping them to find those and encouraging them to celebrate them. That's huge.
It is huge. Yeah.
It's exciting.
So working, I think we can probably all agree that probably every high school student and college student could benefit from working on executive functioning skills or learning executive functioning strategies and tips and tricks and tools. But who is your ideal candidate? What makes a student or even an adult ready for coming to work with you at Lively Minds, or someone who will really benefit from your services?
Well, that's a good question, because we get students in all different phases of awareness, right? Whether they actually realize that this is a struggle for them, and whether they've got a little resistance, whether it's something that they're excited about or something that their parents are making them do. And so we do, we recognize that when we start with a student, where are we in that stage of awareness? But I think one of the biggest pieces is really helping students understand how we can make their lives so much easier, right? Because things are so hard for them now. You've got a student who it's taking them 3 hours to do their homework that should really only take about 20 minutes, right? And so helping them understand that if we help you put some strategies in place, we can make your life easier. And then they start to see the benefit for themselves. That certainly increases that motivation. But really, as far as, our ideal student, it's nice when a student comes with that awareness and understands that if they learn some strategies, these things are going to get better and they're going to be able to be more successful. But when we get the students who don't quite realize that yet, we just start in a different place and we help them start to see that. And we celebrate the little wins. We really make a big point to show them when they've had some success and help them see how that was a benefit to them.
That is huge. And I love that you feel like you can work with them no matter where they are in that awareness process. So even if they haven't really bought into it and they don't think
there's a problem,
they don't think there's a problem, or they don't think they need help, that you're still going to start a process. You just start in a different place and you work them towards that. And you said something so important, is that wouldn't you want life to be easier? And I think that would be a huge catch for middle schoolers and high schoolers. Like, you want your life to be easier? We want to
School.
teach you to work smarter rather than working harder, and cut your study time down in half or even more.
And I so believe, as being one of those high school students back in the day, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
I knew there was a problem, but I would never in a million years have thought something like this would have helped me when it would have changed my life. So I think you don't know what you don't know. And so helping them understand, look, I get this all sounds hokey and silly and a waste of your time, but I promise you, you are going to be so grateful that you did this.
We get that question a lot from our parents as we're getting things set up. I don't really have 100% buy-in from my kid. They're just, they're willing to show up to our consult meeting, but just know they're not all in, right? And I think that's one of the things that we do that I get really excited about is that initial consult where we look at where are some of the areas for growth, how can we make your life easier, but then what are your strengths? And so we spend time at the very beginning really pointing out what are the things you're good at. So when we have that initial family consult before we start any of the coaching, we look at, we have the parents give us some of that student's strengths. We have the student tell us what some of their strengths are. And then we tell them what we saw based on the assessments, where some of their strengths were. And I think that's so important because so often these kids have been told everything they're not good at. They're told that often. And so to be able to recognize, here's all the things that we see that you bring to the table. And now we're just going to help you with a few of these other things so that you can just take off, right? And so even those kids who are real resistant and show up to that consult with their arms crossed, kind of rolling their eyes, which of course that happens, right? I think when we're able to frame it and they see that, okay, these people are pretty normal. This doesn't seem like it's going to be too horrible. And
It's not going to hurt.
yeah.
Right.
And then there's that really big piece where they have this idea that it's going to be a lot of extra work and more stuff that they have to do. And it already takes them 3 hours to do their 20 minutes of work. And so when we help them see that, kind of like what you were saying before, Abby, when we can show them if you work smarter rather than harder, we can make this easier. And when they start to see that it's not going to be extra time for them, it's really going to help them reduce the amount of time they have to spend doing things they don't really want to do. And so...
Well, we have that conversation a lot about how kids with ADHD tend to not want to ask for help. And it's because in their mind, if they ask for help, that generates more work.
Right.
And that is overwhelming.
Right.
So if you're here to help me, that automatically sends my brain into a tailspin of how much work is this going to cost me?
Right.
And I'm completely overwhelmed by it because I already can't get done the stuff I'm doing.
Exactly.
So I love that you kind of present it in a way like this is not... Don't even go that way. Like, that's not even where this is going. We are actually going to reduce your workload. And I'm sure they don't believe it at first, but I'm sure it's pretty quick by the time they figure out, like, okay, hey, this is actually helping.
It's not so bad.
Yeah.
And what ages? I mean, we've talked a lot about like high school age students and college age students, but what age ranges do you work with?
Well, we work with students as young as first grade, and then all the way up through college. I will say, though, that the ages where we as parents really start to recognize that our students need this sort of help is when we transition into new expectations. So when you've got students who are maybe transitioning into upper elementary school and they are needing to do things, that the expectations change a bit, and we realize, oh shoot, my kid doesn't have what they need to meet these new expectations. We see it a lot in the transition to middle school and in the transition to high school. And so so that's kind of when we really see parents understanding that, okay, I think my student needs some strategies. They need a little bit of help to do at this next level.
I think, and also a great bonus that came in my mind as you were talking a little bit earlier is that it makes the parents' life easier as well. They can like fade out some of their nagging and some of their, reminders, and it's 5 more minutes, 4 more minutes, 3 more minutes, and I'm
Changes
leaving.
their relationship.
It helps their relationship. It takes a lot of that negative interaction out of their relationship.
It's funny to me how these kids will listen to anybody but their parent too, right? You can tell them the same exact thing a parent's been telling them, and they're going to listen to you.
Right.
And you're not mom.
No, I still remember the first parent phone call that I got where the mom was in tears and she said, "You've given me a relationship back with my son." Because we just spent all of our time having those conversations of, did you do your homework? Why didn't you? Did you study for your test? Where's your math homework? Just all of the things, right, that you've got to stay on top of because you want to help them find the success that you know they're capable of. But at some point, if we're able to step back out of that role a little bit and let somebody else help them start to learn some of those things for themselves, now we can have the other conversations that really help us build a relationship with our kid. And so I've talked to a lot of parents who've had that similar experience, but I'll never forget the first call because it was just, it was so powerful.
What? I'm curious with the kids that you work with, because we talk a lot about the kind of the sweet spot for working with kids with ADHD. Like, medication is great, but it's not going to do the things coaching does. And coaching is great, but it doesn't always cover everything. So you've got that kind of 50-50 split. So do you have a lot of kids that do not use medication to help with their focus? And do you notice a difference in their progress? Like, can you speak to that at all? I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's a good question. We do have students who are medicated, and we have students who are not medicated. I think, as you know, it just depends a lot on the student themselves, and what other sort of things parents are putting in place, and whether some of those systems are really organized and clear at home helps a lot too. So it really just depends on so many factors. And I think, when we look at coaching in general, we often have parents say, okay, so how much coaching does my student need? Like when will we be finished? And I think, it's a hard question to answer, and you want to give an honest answer, but it's really hard to know because there's so many factors that play in. And so we always tell our families, you're going to see some little changes in those first couple of months, but they're going to feel really little. And then you're going to start to see it snowball in those next few months. That's when they're starting to build. But it's like any other skill. If you're learning to read, you're just recognizing letters and sounds at the beginning, and then it snowballs. And so it's just like that.
So there's not really a set amount of sessions that an individual is going to need. It's more based on their individual needs and the progress they make.
That is true, but we do set up a very structured plan, and parents are a part of that, so that way they know exactly which executive function goals we're working on. And they know that we're going to spend, this amount of time on that executive function goal, and this is the action plan that we're going to put in place to practice it. So it is very structured so that parents have that reassurance that we really are working on these things, that it's, we're not just kind of winging it each week. And so there's a real solid plan in place, and they are a part of that. And so I think that gives our families some reassurance that we really are focused on what we're trying to accomplish with that student.
How much support do you get from the school side?
That's a good question. We really don't get much support at this point. We, when we first started, we really worked hard to include the teachers in that process and in that plan. And it was frustrating. So we had a very difficult time. We spent a good amount of time just trying to chase down the classroom teachers, and understandably so. I was in the classroom. I know that there's so many things to try to do in a day, but it just didn't quite give us the support that we were looking for, and it frustrated our parents. And so, so we really,
and probably wasted a lot of good, precious time.
Yeah, it does. And it kind of sets the expectation up for failure. So we don't spend a lot of time on that side of it, even though we are teaching students strategies that they can use in different learning environments. So whether they're working at home or they're working at school, we're teaching them those different strategies so that it transfers to their different environments.
So these executive functioning skills are more like, independent living skills, life skills, strategies. Do you offer any kind of academic support or tutoring, or if a student has a big project coming up, do you help, can a coach help them kind of plan ahead and prepare for that project and work through it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So all of our coaching is geared towards academic executive functions. So we're looking at the executive functions that help them with learning. So for instance, we don't do executive function coaching for cleaning out their closets or that sort of thing. We're really focused on the academic piece. And so our coaches are all educators, and they've got at least a master's degree, and they've got a lot of experience working with students with executive function struggles. So our focus is on the academics. So we love it when we're able to teach a skill that coincides with something they're doing, whether it's a big project or that sort of thing. We do offer academic tutoring as well, content tutoring, but we keep it separate so if we have a student who's struggling with executive functions and math, then we do executive function coaching and math tutoring so that those two things don't interfere with one another.
That's great. I love that it's like EF skills through the educational lens. That it's like, these are the skills you need to be successful in an educational setting and environment. Yeah. And those are also skills that you're going to need in high school and college or vocational school and in life, even going to work and getting a job.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's fabulous. Well, you mentioned that your coaches are all educators, and so do they have a special education background, or are they just, some are general educators, some are special educators?
No, some of our coaches have special education backgrounds, and some of them have school counseling backgrounds or school psych backgrounds, and so it varies a bit. And one of the things I get most excited about, we do all of our coaching virtually so that we're able to really make sure we make good matches for our students. And so we've got coaches with a lot of different experience and backgrounds, and that way we can make sure that we've made a good match.
I love that. So after that first consult meeting, that helps you decide how to choose, or that helps you choose the most appropriate coach for that individual.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. That's great. Oh my goodness. And how many coaches do you have in Lively Minds?
I haven't looked recently, but I would guess probably around 25 or so. So kind of in that ballpark.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So you've got a good pot to choose from.
Yeah. It's good. I mean, and that's awesome. One of the pieces that makes such a huge difference is whether there's that connection for them. So we look for something that they'll have in common right away, but then also making sure that that coach has the right experience to work with the needs that student has.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. That's so great. So, Candace, if a parent or a college student that's listening, or even a young adult that's not in college, that's kind of in limbo, if they wanted to, obtain your services or get to your website or learn more about Lively Minds Institute, how do they find you?
I think the easiest way is probably just on the website. So it's livelymindsinstitute.com. And there are a lot of resources there. So we have resources for students, resources for parents. So a lot of information and tools that you can use if you wanted to kind of try to work on some of those things on your own. And then, of course, if you want or need some extra support, you can reach us there.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And we'll link your website in our show notes as well. Well, thank you so very much for being with us and for sharing all about Lively Minds. I'm so excited for our listeners to find out more about your services and just to have more resources and to realize that it's very common for students to struggle with their executive functioning skills, common enough that there are companies that employ 25 plus coaches that work on these skills.
Yeah, true. Yes. Yeah. Well, and you said it earlier. I think most high school, college kids on some level would benefit from learning some new strategies just to help them be the most successful they can be. So that's exciting.
Absolutely. And reach their potential.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for being with us. And thank you to our listeners. We look forward to the next episode and you guys coming back. We appreciate you listening and keeping us at the top of the podcast list. And if you have questions or ideas for future podcasts, you can feel free to email us at letstalklearningdisabilities@gmail.com. And you can also access our podcast website at www.ltldpodcast.com, where you can see every episode we've recorded so far in chronological order, or you can even choose episodes by categories. So if you wanted to click on ADHD or executive functioning skills, and every episode where we've talked about executive functioning will be there. So check that out, and you guys come back and listen to the next one, and have a great day. And thanks again, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for joining us today. In our show notes, you can find information about today's talk, as well as links to resources and other episodes. If you have questions about today's talk, have ideas for future episodes, or just want to stay connected, you can contact us through Diagnostic Learning Services on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. So, let's keep talking learning disabilities. This podcast is sponsored by eDiagnostic Learning. You can find more information at www.ediagnosticlearning.com.